Assalamualaikum and welcome back to another video lecture by Sir Shazwan. Today we'll be looking at PRL, or what we call Personal Reading Log. PRL is part of ELC151 assessment. Today we'll be looking at what makes up the PRL, what do you need to do, and what you will face for your assessment so that you will be ready and be able to provide the necessary information as well as the story that you will use for your assessment. So, without further ado, let's look at personal reading log. Okay, there are some definitions of short stories. For this PRL, you will be working with short stories from in English. Okay? So, short stories is a work of fiction. So, it involves your imagination. Whatever you think of, whatever you feel like, that it will be called imagination. So people use their imagination to create a story based on that. Okay. So short story tells tales of one event in a very concentrated way. So it focuses on the story as well as the characters in it. Okay. It's about people who don't really exist. Usually short stories, people won't they talk about stories of people who are not really alive or exist. Okay, it describes something of at a moment of crisis. Yes, a story about something that happens made up. Okay, and then it has plot and characters who are somehow connected with each other, so the story revolves around them. Right now, there are some other definitions that we can talk about short story, which are a short story can involve a chronology or a sequence of events and causation, a fact that events are somehow connected with each other and some event may result from one another. So it happens based on a certain order, and then this order there are a cause of it. Something happens because of something else. So there is a chronology and then there is a causation. So they are connected between one and each other. Okay, so that is what we call a short story. So remember, short story they have 5 elements. They can have more, but we usually will focus with towards these 5 elements. So the first thing we have the setting, which is the location and time of the story. When is it happen? Where does it happen? So that it will be the setting. And then we have the characters, the people involved in the story, and then their relationship between each other. Are they good within one another or are they enemies? That is the characters. Then we have the plot or the storyline. So they have the actions or events, what happened in the story. So maybe there is like a issue between the characters. So that is where they talk about the plot or storyline. And then the theme, which is the main or recurrent idea. Okay, as well as it can be the lesson to learn for you. Okay, in the story. And then lastly, we have the style or how the writing of the story. Is it done? Is it done in the past? Is it using old style of writing, a new style of writing? So depends on the story. So these 5 elements will be the focus for your personal reading log. So do bear in that in mind. Right. So let's review the elements of a short story so that you will be able to understand what you need to include when you are writing your personal reading log. So setting. So setting tells the reader where and when the story takes place. It also refers to the mood and tone of the story. So for example, the story happens in the United Kingdom, or maybe it happens in Ulu Klang, for example, or it happens during the Victorian era, or maybe during the Ice Age, during the Stone Age, for example. So that is where it happens. Okay, when it happens as well. Today, tomorrow, yesterday, last few months, last year, last 20 years, that can be said like that, right? Mood and tone is also part of setting. Is the story happy or is the story sad, melancholy? So those are called mood and tone of the story. So how do you identify that? You look at the way the story have been written. You read through, understand whether the story is sad or no, whether it's happy or no. You are the one who will decide that. Okay? Characters and characterization. After you find out the settings, when you find out where is it, what happens there, when it happens, then you look at the characters. Characters is what makes the story comes alive because the story revolves around them. Okay, so characters, the people, and in some stories, animals that take part in the story. So the story talks about them. Okay, description of the personalities of the characters in the story and the way in which an author reveals their personalities means that they describe the characters to their physical appearance as well as their inner characteristic. For example, the character looks very handsome, the character looks very tall, dashing, beautiful, cute, and the enemy looks ugly, short. So those are physical characteristics. What about inner characteristic? We talks about their inner self. For example, they are brave, they are full of energy, they are happy always, and then they never give up. Or maybe they are revengeful, they don't like to work with other people. So those are inner characteristics. So whenever you talk about the characters of a particular story, remember to describe the physical characteristic as well as the inner characteristic of the characters. Usually we will focus on the main characters as well as some of the side characters. So, to identification of characters, we have the protagonist, which we call the hero of the story. So the story is based on that hero. Okay? And then we have the antagonist, who is the villain of the story. They always oppose the protagonist. So the story is about the protagonist as well as the conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist. So remember that. Okay. So every short story they might have only some of the short story might only have protagonists, but most of them will have both of it because they want to show the conflict of the story. So methods of characterization. This is the way that they use to create believable characters. So indirectly, how you talk about the physical appearance. Okay. So indirectly, they just mention about the character's physical appearance, how they look, and then they talk about their speech, thoughts, feelings, or actions of the character, what they do, what they think about, what they talk, and then what they feels, and then lastly, they is similar to that, but it's on other characters. So what is other characters thinking about the particular character? Maybe this character thinks about the protagonist as being very cool, very good, and then very active, passionate, semua those kind of things. So that is speech, thoughts, feelings, or actions of other characters. So those are indirect. Direct is where the narrators themselves commented about the character. Okay? So the narrator itself, the ones who tell the story, is the one who talks about the character. So that is what we call direct. But the indirect is just mentioned briefly. Okay? Then, moving on to plot. Plot is the sequence or order of events in a story. From A to Z, that is what the plot is about. Okay, it starts off with a story, and then it ends off with the conclusion. Okay, so the standard plots include exposition statement. Okay, the part of the plot that tells how the story begins, what happened in the start. So the protagonist was born in something something, because why, then those kinds of things, where did he born, or what happens. They just introduce the characters, they introduce the settings, then they introduce the story behind the what they are trying to tell. Okay, and then after the exposition statement, they move towards the rising action. So the action in the story, it leads up to the climax. What happens that causes the story to move forward? Okay, anything. Maybe they have an issue there. Maybe they found out that someone is controlling the world differently, or those kinds of things. Okay, and then the conflict. So the struggles or problems between opposing forces, usually between the protagonist and the antagonist. So the conflict, you have to mention that what happens that causes the story to move forward. Okay. Then we have the climax, the point of crisis in the plot. So it may be the reader's point of highest interest. What happened during the climax? Maybe there is a fight between the protagonist and the antagonist. They are having maybe they are fighting to the death because of they need to, one wants to destroy the world or something. The antagonist want to destroy the world, and the protagonist have to stop them before the world is destroyed. So that is an example. And then that is the falling action. After the climax, what happens? What they are trying to do after that? What's resolved in that? And then the resolution, where there is the ending of the story. What happens after everything that, for example, the war, there is a war, and then you have defeated the boss. What happens after that? And then they will conclude with the ending of the story. So that is the standard plot of a story. So whenever they ask you about the plot, please provide a brief explanation on all the parts of the story. Okay? So we talk about types of conflict. So conflict can be between different forces. Okay, it can be man versus man, meaning that people are fighting against other people. For example, protagonist versus the antagonist, a hero versus the demon, for example. Okay, anime vibes. So that is types of conflict. Number 1. Number 2, man versus nature. For example, movies like earthquake or tsunamis or anything, those are man versus nature. Tornadoes, typhoons, those kinds of things. Okay. Third one, man versus obstacle or society. Maybe they are living in a society where people doesn't believe in one another, and killing happens, or those kinds of things. So that is what we call man versus obstacle or society. Okay, and then man versus supernatural being, maybe against aliens, maybe against something that doesn't really exist in our time, our life. Okay, and then lastly, conflict, man versus himself. Maybe someone wants to run away from his past. Maybe he's done so badly that he wants to run away from it. So that is a conflict. That is called what we call inner conflict. Man versus himself. People from his past are trying to kill him. For example, those are what we call inner conflict. Okay. So this is what you can talk about when they talk about types of conflict. Okay. So a plot. This is the standard structure of a story. We have the exposition, where the background information establish the setting and describe the situation. Then we have the rising action, where the characters face and try to solve the problem. So this results in conflicts within themselves or with others. Okay, conflict with others and or within themselves. And then climax. Eventually, the story reaches the crucial moment. So the tension that is building reaches a peak. So this is the peak there. Okay, they have become it's bubbling, and they are it becomes the point of no return or something. Okay, there is a climax. And then following action, sometimes called the denouement, is part of the story that explores the consequence of the climax. The tension in the story begins to ease. The tension hits the highest peak. There might have been everything that happens, very bad things that happen. So following action, they are starting to ease up, and then they have the resolution. The story central problem is finally solved, leaving the reader with a sense of completion. What happens at the end? Okay. So whenever they ask you about the structure of the story or the plot, this is how you can show to other people in the form of diagrams. Or when they ask you to write down, please make sure you write down each step accordingly. Follow the step provided. Okay. So what we can say is that the student's problem in understanding with the short story is that understanding the cultural background of the story. Some people might have problems in understanding the cultural background because the story might not be related to our culture. Okay, it is very different, and we might not have the same things that they are telling us about. So that might make us problem in understanding the story. Okay, because the culture is very different, and then sometimes we might not be able to appreciate the style because maybe it's written in the way that it is very complicated, maybe olden style of writing, so that might make us feel bored or something. So that is problems in understanding the short story. So inadequate reading strategies. So we tend to focus on every word rather than the general meaning. Sometimes we read one by one rather than we read everything directly. Okay, that makes us feel like understanding the topic is very hard, which is not true actually. You need to just read like you are reading something that you like. Okay, try to make your feel like you enjoy the reading rather than it is a chore. Okay, and then making interpretations. You should not be lacking in confidence. You just feel you need to be confident. All right. So believe in yourself. Try to make your own interpretation. What do you really feel about the particular topic or points that you found in reading the story? Do not discourage yourself by thinking that it is incorrect. Just try to be confident, and then try do not try to cope with ambiguity. Okay, try to be clear as possible, because when you are trying to cope with ambiguity, you tend to just let it be and you don't want to continue on. So don't cope with ambiguity. Okay, try to cope. It means that you try to not let it be ambiguous. Try to explain it and make it as clear as possible. And then yes, a big issue is that in motivation, you are lacking in confidence. Okay, so don't be discouraged. Just enjoy what you read. Okay, and then try to find things that make it interesting. And then whenever the content of the stories is uninteresting, yes, you don't have motivation to read it. It becomes a hassle to read. So you don't try to find something that is interesting to you. Make it is a motivation for you to read. And then you don't read much. Well, that is a issue that can be solved if you have the motivation. If you have motivation, then you will read more. Okay. Comprehension, following the plot, understanding the characters, understanding the vocabulary, and understanding the role of the narrator. Sometimes we might have issues with that. So we might not understand the story. What is the story about? What is the characters? The feelings of the characters. Then the words used might be very technical and using jargons, those kinds of things. And why is the narrator there? So that can affect our comprehension of the story. So we need to be mindful of that. Okay. So with all that, why should we learn short stories? So we need we need to learn it because we want to give response to text, because we want to give opinions as well as justify our opinions. Whenever you give an opinion, you must justify it. You just don't say it and then keep quiet, because people won't believe you. Okay, you must respond by giving your opinions and justify. And how you want to develop that skill, you learn to read short stories. Okay, you learn about short stories. It will help you develop your ability to give opinions and justify them. Okay. So why do you learn? You will add more knowledge of text features. So whenever you learn about the short story, you look at it, there are certain features that are good for you to follow. Okay, and then if you follow it, you can apply it when you are writing your own short story in the future, if possible. Okay, so there are certain features, there are certain aspects that people follow when they're writing. They start with the introduction, those kinds of things, or maybe they are giving flashbacks, so those can be applied when you are writing. Why you learn short story is to develop your reading skills. So you will be able to make inferences, you can be able to identify the main idea, and you will be able to predict events that might happen. So making inferences is a very good skill for you to have, because everything in life will be for you to try to make inferences based on what you have read. So that is crucial for you to learn about it. Okay. And then responding to characters. So responding to plots, responding to themes are helpful when you learn through it. You learn about it through short stories. Okay. So approach to interpret a short story. How do you try to understand a particular short story? Okay, you understand the features of the text type, how they write the story, in what form they write the story, and then understand the features of the genre. So certain story, they start with a particular aspect. Maybe they talk about action, maybe they start off with the background of the story, and then they talk about the issue within the characters, for example. Or maybe the genre is about love, they talk about the situation of love towards that particular place or something. Okay, and then you analyze the text when you are interpreting to the short story. Okay, and then stages in working with the text, like we have learned before, we have pre-reading, while reading, and after reading. So pre-reading, what do? You build up knowledge of the topic, so you know the story is about something. Maybe it's about war, so you try to think of things that are related to war. What do you understand yourself about war? Okay, or maybe the topic is about love, the story is about love. Try to get back to your knowledge, understand, and try to get back your prior knowledge on about the topic of love, so that you will be able to understand the story well. Okay, while reading or post reading. Okay, while you are reading, while you are after you read, you understand the details. Whatever the author write in the story, try to understand the details. What helps to elaborate the story? What makes the story have that particular storyline or genre? Okay, and then after that, there are certain activities that you can do, which is integrating and applying what you have learned from the story. Or maybe try to write up something, or a review based on the story that you have read. Okay, so that is exertion activities. What do you do after you got the details from the short story or any kind of text that you have read? So coming back to our personal reading log, PRL. So what is it? So it offers you a chance to respond personally to short stories and to ask questions, ponder, predict, reflect, analyze, interpret, and give opinion on plot, setting, characters, events, themes, and language, and etc. Basically, you are trying to question why the story is like that. Okay, what is the character doing there? Why is it there? how is it done, the characters, why is it written like that, the story, uh, uh, anything that will happen. So those are what PRL is all about. Okay, how do you do that? You will write between 150 to 100 words, and then you don't copy from the text or write the plot. You are writing something based on the ideas that have been written in the story, not writing back the story. So activities, it is based on the task given. It can be a second question or a string of questions. Depends on instructors, and string as question can help students struggling with comprehending PRL. So the questions can be 2 or 3 questions, but in smaller details, or one whole question that requires you to provide a much larger input compared to the previous ones. Okay, right. So it depends on the instructors. So expressions to use if you don't know what to write. So you can use some of these words. Okay, in my opinion, I am impressed by, I noticed that, I wonder about, this reminds me of, I never thought, this part of the story makes me feel, and I predict. So that is what you can use when you want to start writing your opinion based on a particular point. Maybe you want to talk about the characters. I was impressed by the main character because he or she has shown that they have the qualities of becoming a good leader, for example. So that is how you use the expressions. And remember, there is no correct answer or response because this is all from you. Okay, each story yields a different response. Everyone have their own opinion and they have their own impressions toward a particular story. So you are required to reflect on a certain situation or situations in the story by giving your own interpretation. There is no one correct or wrong answer. Okay? So whatever you think about the particular story, that is your answer. So let's look at the sample short story. So this is the sample which you can read off. I will you will tell you about the story, the characters, the plot, and then the theme of the story. So which you be able to understand it. So you might need, you want to read it on your own. This one is another example, and then you can select a few of the 8 given expressions to answer the question below. So this is a possible question that might be asked for you, okay, to you. So this you can try out to do some of these answers so that you'll be able to be more prepared when they ask you about questions related to the story. Okay, so this is sample which you can look at whether you want to be able to write something like that, similar to that. And then there are some interactive activities that you can do that will be able to help you do more activities like this. And then that's it. Thank you for listening to me. Hope this helps because this is will be very crucial for you to be prepared for your PRL, which will be coming soon. So don't worry too much. Try to enjoy the experience of reading short stories, which will be very helpful for you and for others to learn about it, as well as for you to experience what people enjoy reading. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me. My name is Shazwan, and have a good one. Thank you.